Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us again. In this segment, we're going to be speaking with returning guest Dr. Joe Flanders. He's joining us here as Vice President, Psychology at Numinus. He's returning to talk about end-of-life patients in Canada now having psilocybin-assisted therapy as a tool to battle their depression if all other remedies fail. Welcome back, Joe. How have you been?
I've been great. Thanks a lot for having me.
Give us a little bit of insight into your professional background and talk about being Vice President of Psychology at Numinus briefly.
Right. So I'm Joe Flanders. I'm a psychologist here in Montreal, and I've been working as a psychotherapist for many years, doing professional development, facilitation and program development, and have taken an interest and developed some expertise in psychedelic-assisted therapies. And I'm currently working with ketamine, MDMA, and psilocybin, and also involved in training therapists to do the same. So it's a very exciting time, and very happy to be doing what I'm doing.
Now, needless to say, much of the stigma that has been associated with psychedelics, from the 60s through the, 90s, has kind of been stripped away. Is that correct?
I mean, I think there's a trend in that direction. I think there's still plenty of stigma to go around. I think in the field that I'm in, it feels like everyone's on board, but I think there's still lots and lots of skeptical people, and for good reason. I think, these medicines are not kind of a panacea that's going to solve the world's problems, but it's a truly exciting opportunity to have a new tool for health professionals. But I think there's still lots of education and harm reduction work to be done.
What prevented Canadians from having this option previously?
So psychedelics are controlled substances in Canada, just like they are in the U.S. And until recently, there's a program called the Special Access Program. And this is basically a way for people with treatment-resistant conditions to have access to medicines that are still in clinical trials that have not yet been approved by Health Canada. And until recently, most controlled substances were banned from this list. So even if there was a medicine in clinical trials that showed great promise, if they were classified in this way, patients couldn't have access to them. In January of 2022, Health Canada changed the law and made many of these controlled substances available through the Special Access Program. So it basically means that people with life-threatening or treatment-resistant conditions could apply to have things like that have access to treatments using psilocybin and MDMA. So it's an important change, and it signals really for the first time that Health Canada recognizes the strong therapeutic potential of these medicines.
Now, when it comes to end-of-life treatment, a patient has, they're at the end of their life, they're very depressed, maybe in pain. Is PAP indicated only for psychological assistance, or are there any physical benefits from its use?
My understanding is that psychedelic-assisted therapy is available to people with end-of-life distress to address their distress, their psychological distress. There are no physical indications or physical illnesses that these therapies are aimed at treating, with the exception perhaps of chronic pain, but I'm not sure how frequently that has come up in the end-of-life care.
Talk about some of the benefits of end-of-life treatment with PAP.
It's a really interesting kind of phenomenon. I think that, earlier, before psychedelics were available to the Special Access Program, individuals suffering from end-of-life distress were supported by a company called Therasil, who were basically arguing all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada that these individuals have the right to mess with their brain chemistry however they want. And, the sort of cynical joke is that you can apply and have access to assisted dying more easily and more quickly than end-of-life care with something like psilocybin. And the bottom line here is that death is a scary thing for many people. Knowing that you have a terminal illness and death is coming sooner than later can be very destabilizing, come with a lot of distress, a lot of anxiety. People can feel very depressed at a moment where it's an opportunity to try to make the best of your last moments alive with loved ones, etc. And so, something like psilocybin is a really, really powerful tool for confronting these concerns, for making meaning out of this phase of one's life, for having perspective on life and death and our place in nature and these kinds of things. So it really is a very interesting, a very promising avenue to help people in this phase of their lives.
Were any considerations taken in the SAP for the benefits of PAP for someone not dealing with end-of-life treatments? Was that taken into consideration for PAP?
Basically, anyone can apply for access to psilocybin and MDMA and potentially even other psychedelic anytime they want. Their doctor has to submit an application to Health Canada. However, Health Canada is going to decide on the basis of this application if this patient should have access to a psychedelic-assisted therapy. And they're going to make that assessment on the basis of the status of the research, the clinical trials, for example, that show the evidence for the effectiveness of those treatments for specific indications. And so there's a whole range of research programs on different psychedelics for different indications. And the most advanced clinical trials involve psilocybin for depression and substance use disorders. And so those are really the areas where doctors are putting in the most applications and where the applications are being approved. Again, doctors can apply on behalf of their patients to do all kinds of combinations of medicines and indications, but those are less likely to be approved by Health Canada.
What's next for Numinus? What are you working on?
Yeah, it's an exciting time at Numinus. We are integrating our new partners at Novamind down in the U.S., and that just brings an enormous amount of new talent and new expertise and great people. And so that's been really exciting to have our first clinics in the U.S. We are really, really focused on delivering the highest possible level of care to the clients and the patients we see in all of our clinics. And a project that I'm especially excited about is the development of our professional development and continuing education programs and really building community for practitioners. Of course, the rescheduling and legalization or approval of these treatments is not that far away. And when, for example, MDMA is going to be available for the treatment of PTSD legally, approved by Health Canada and the FDA and all that, and maybe not too far after that with psilocybin for depression and other indications, we're going to have a massive, massive shortage of therapists. And the therapists really need to know what they're doing, because these medicines are powerful, and the environment and the therapeutic care really need to be taken care of in a way that maximizes the benefits and minimizes the potential harms. So I'm just fired up about the opportunity to meet therapists and train them and basically meet this wave of need that's coming our way.
Give us a website where we can learn more.
Yeah, so lots of stuff available at Numinus.com. That's Numinus.com. And we just launched our new branding, so new logo, new colors. Looks great. I invite people to check it out.
Joe, thank you so much for returning here with us this morning.
Thanks again for having me. Take care.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with returning guest Dr. Joe Flanders. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.